You may look around and think that what you see is real, but in truth, you are living in an illusion designed to keep you in a mental, emotional, and spiritual prison cell. My guest this next hour, David Icke, exposes these forces and their methods of human control, and he reveals a fantastic web of global manipulation orchestrated by forces beyond this physical realm. He also exposes the hidden bloodlines through which other dimensional entities live and operate unseen among us, and he shows how the bloodlines of the royal, political, and economic rulers of today are the same as those who ruled as the kings and queens of ancient times. And today we're going to be talking about that, and he joins me once again. He returns for another show. Welcome, David. Thanks so much for joining me.
Pleasure, Hillary.
So where are we in the world right now? I mean, we have all this stuff going on, and I always like to check in with you with updates, and we have this big Gulf spill, and I'd like to start there and get your intake, on what's happening right now. What is the agenda right now that we're living in?
Well, I've been writing for 20 years about something I call the truth vibrations. The truth vibrations was, funnily enough, the name of the first book I ever wrote after I started to awaken myself in 1990. And what I learned 2 decades ago was that a vibrational change was coming, which was going to increasingly act like a spiritual alarm clock and wake people up from their coma, from their deep sleep that we've been in. And the more that I've understood this as the years have passed, what is happening is that we are at the cusp of an epoch change. In my new book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, I go into the fact that this reality, it goes through a cycle, and that cycle is dictated by a vibrational cycle that comes out of the black holes. In our case, the black hole at the center of this galaxy, which the scientists are now identifying, and it's suggested there's one at the center of every galaxy. But it's a vibrational cycle. So as the vibrational change happens, it elicits different information in the form of photon energy coming from the suns. And we decode this through what I call the body computer. We've discussed this before, into this reality that we are experiencing. And you can liken it, not just symbolically, but in very many ways, in actual terms, to the wireless internet. I'm sitting in a room now, and if it had the wireless internet, I could look around and I would not see it. It would just be a room to me and just what appears to be empty space. But if I turn on a computer, out of the ether, out of the unseen, without any wire connections or anything, I can pull a whole collective reality out of that wireless internet, that unseen realm, onto a screen. And what we're doing through what I call the body computer, the biological body computer system, in the sense that it has the ability to assess information and make decisions for itself, not just react to the way it's programmed. I mean, I'm sitting here now, you're sitting in there now, everyone's listening to this program sitting or wherever they are, and their immune system is working and making decisions constantly on how to react to this situation or that potential threat or whatever. You're not aware of that. I'm not aware of that. We're just chatting. So there's a heck of a lot going on within the body computer system that we are simply not aware of, but it is actually up to its own level of awareness, making decisions based on the information that it's receiving. And so what is happening is the human body computer is decoding this photon information, and it's turning it from the vibrational into the electrical, into the digital, and finally into the holographic. And it's the holographic reality that we experience as what we call the physical world. Now, this vibration, which changes over a period of time, or what we call time, is in effect creating what I've called in my books before the time loop. One of my books is called Tales from the Time Loop, where you start at a certain point and then you go round and then you basically come back to the same point, not in every detail, but in theme. But it's not actually a time loop because there is no time. What we call time and space are constructs, information constructs that we decode through the body computer into the illusion of time and space. This vibration is happening in what we call the now, this only moment that exists. And as it changes, as it moves through its cycle, it appears, because of the way we decode reality, it appears to change, and it appears to go through past, through present to future in this time loop. But what it actually is a vibration in the now that just goes through a cycle. It's not going through a period of time at all. It's all illusory. Anyway, the point is that there are certain points in this cycle which in Asia and the ancient Indian world they call yugas. We of course know about the Mayan concept of circular time, and it's something that appears in all the ancient cultures. This concept of going through a loop, of going through a time loop, a time period, and then coming back to the start. And we're at the point now where the cusp is between a period of very, what people would call a dark period of suppression, of limitation or sense of limitation. That's what it is. And we're now at the cusp of a massive fundamental change to a period in this cycle, which is about expansion of consciousness, the end of limitation, and the opening of massively greater potential for creation, self-creation, and the ability to manifest whatever we want to manifest. And at this point now, and what I call the truth vibrations, are this new energetic change moving in, and it's changing the information that we're receiving, and therefore those that are starting to tune into this, and more people are, they start to dramatically, in many cases now, change their perception of the world, their sense of reality, who they are, what they are, the nature of their own possibility. This is what is happening now. And of course, some people are still closed. Most people at this minute are still closed and shutting off from this this vibrational change, these truth vibrations. And they're starting they're kind of clinging on to the old epoch, the old energy. And the control system that I've been writing about and exposing all these years is a manifestation of that previous epoch, the dying epoch, one of control and suppression and imposition and limitation. And so we look at the control system now, and I understand why. My goodness me, I do. And for a few years, it's going to still look like this, that it's actually gaining more and more power and more and more control and more domination. But what we're seeing, I would suggest, is the last desperate throw of the dice, the last desperate attempt to hold on to the control that it has had. And because the truth vibrations are coming in, because people are starting to awaken, because people are being affected more and more by this vibrational change at this cusp of yuga change, if you like, they are having to throw more and more at us to keep us in the state of suppression that we were before, and thus it is becoming more and more obvious to people that there is a control system going on, because it's becoming more blatant as they throw more and more things at us. And in the next few years, it's going to seem that it's everything is lost, that the control system can't be stopped and all the rest of it. But there's going to come a point in a few years, not a few decades, where that cusp point, that tipping point comes, where the new energetic epoch, the truth vibrations, become the dominant information force in this reality, and at that point the control system will start to lose its power very, very rapidly and eventually collapse.
David, I have to ask you this question. Now, you've come on the show a few times before, and we've talked a lot about your work, and I'm very familiar with your work, and you've been doing this for a very long time. Why are you still alive? Because you're exposing so much really powerful information that's changing people's consciousness as they find it and really begin to open their eyes. How is it that you've been able to be here still?
Well, I've been asked this question many times over the years, and it's even got to the point sometimes, Hillary, where I've seen myself on, quote, blacklists as a disinformer, because if what he was saying was true, he'd be dead. And alongside me are listed people who've died, who've been putting out certain types of information. But my response to that is, well, let's all line up now, put our hands out for the handcuffs and our ankles out for the ball and chain, because what you're telling me, therefore, and I'm talking about the people who say that, is that we're doomed. Because anyone that speaks out and has anything valid to say is going to be taken out. And indeed, being taken out is their license to credibility. And so what's the point? Let's just all line up and walk in the prison camp and just accept it. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm saying is that we create our own reality, and we are decoding a collective reality from the unseen, like I say, that the cosmic internet, as I call it, the equivalent of the wireless internet. But just as, you go online and we can go to the same websites, we'll see the same graphics, we'll see the same words, we'll see the same colors, we'll see the same pictures, because we're experiencing a collective reality, but we won't all have an opinion, a reaction, or a response to what we see that's the same. That's where we, as unique expressions of infinite consciousness, put our own spin on reality. And where I'm coming from is that there are forces at work which are expressions of these truth vibrations, and there are large numbers of them, and more all the time, who are beyond the ability of the control system to take them out. Because if I do not let the fact that I could be taken out into my reality, I cannot decode it into physical experience. I can't do that. And I'll tell you an interesting story. I think it's interesting. When I first came to America in 1996, and I was talking to a man and a dog, and sometimes even the man didn't come, what I did was met a lot of whistleblowers, and I saw a lot of whistleblowers from government and other areas speaking. And what I saw again and again, not in every case, but a significant number, were people wearing the attacks upon them as like a war medal. It's like and some people, I won't mention his name, but I was in someone's house one day, back in 1996. It was up in New England, and I was waiting to talk in that person's house. That's how big the audiences were at that time for this information. And he went out, and I put a video in, and I saw this man talking. And he was saying some very, very interesting things. But he kept repeating, I don't know how long they're going to let me keep saying this. I don't know how long that I can keep saying this before they take me out. And I sat there that day, Hillary, and I thought, you want to be careful, mate, because you're going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're not careful. The guy came back home, and I said, it's a very interesting video. I had a lot of interesting things to say. I said, what's happened to this guy? Where is he now? He said he's dead. He was murdered. And I thought, well, to be honest, I'm actually not surprised, because, we either manifest our power here, or we run around posturing our inability to continue to do it for as long as we want as some kind of confirmation that we're speaking the truth. I mean, it's like going round and round and round in circles. And I just wake up every day. I'm doing this 12 hours a day, day after day after day, and I will till I keel over. It's my life. It's my passion. It's the only thing I'm interested in doing. And I put one foot in front of the other. And what tends to happen is you get somewhere. Now, I've had a number of efforts to undermine me financially, people being put in my life to undermine me. In fact, the people that have caused me most at my work, my health and everything, most difficulty, most stress, and been the biggest challenges have been people who have expressed their love and support for me more than anybody else. So there are many, many different ways to undermine someone or attempt to without actually pulling a trigger. But what you do is no matter what's thrown at you, you get up off the floor, you brush yourself down, and you carry on. And when you do that, when you keep being the rubber ball who you can undermine, you can cause stress for, you can cause difficulties for, and all the rest of it, but the rubber ball keeps bouncing. And it's not that I've had 20 years where I've just been left alone. I mean, I've gone through the most extraordinary, staggering levels of ridicule and abuse in this country, Britain particularly. But I've had efforts to undermine me all over the place. But what you do is you get up, you brush yourself down, and you start all over again. And when you do that, you cannot be stopped.
David, I have to ask you this question, too, because somebody knew I was going to be doing this show with you, and they wanted me to ask you this question, and I'm curious what your answer is. Now, there's some proof out there that there are electromagnetic weaponry, things that can interfere with people's consciousness, their electromagnetic field as a form of stopping people, making them sick, giving them cancer, those kinds of things. What's your take on that whole topic? What do you feel is truthful about that?
I think there's no question that's true. Yes. I mean, I've gone through some amazing, funnily enough, electromagnetic attacks myself. They've actually pretty much stopped now, funnily enough. But around the end of 2009, right across January and February, every night, virtually every night, I would wake up and there would be these tremendous electromagnetic fields in the bedroom. They sometimes look like metallic like spider things and all the rest of it. But then there was it wasn't that, you could just see them. You could feel them very powerfully too. I remember one night, they were, disrupting my, sleep so much that I got up out of the bedroom and I walked into my lounge and I lay on the sofa and, I fell asleep there and I woke up again. And I looked across, and next to the television set was this, Catherine wheels, these fireworks Catherine wheels. Mm-hmm. There was a spinning kind of Catherine wheel of it wasn't colored energy, and it was spinning with extraordinary speed. And in the middle was again a metallic spider-like thing going out, like the core of it. And I watched it. It wasn't that it was just there for a few seconds and then went. I watched it for about a minute and a half, and I got up and I thought I'm going to see what this is going on. I walked towards it, and as I walked very close towards it, it had gone. And this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then just suddenly stopped. I have it, kind of maybe 2 or 3 times a month now, but nothing like as intense as I did then. What that was all about, I have no idea. But that was, and that at the time when I was going through that experience, it was disrupting my health. My rheumatoid arthritis, which is not good at the best of times, was very, very bad then, and I had 1 or 2 other health situations. But again, I'll be honest, what I used to do, I used to wake up, turn over, see all this metallic, electromagnetic stuff around me, and I would, shall I say, give it the finger, and then I would turn over and go back to sleep. It was quite funny, because instead of, they're out to get me or whatever, it's like, okay, whatever, throw anything at me, I'm not bothered.
Do you think that lack of, do you think that the fear equation is also included in this, because if you're afraid that they can get to you, then that changes the whole game, doesn't it?
No, that's a very important point, because what we're dealing with here is frequencies that are either compatible or not compatible. You know, if someone is vibrating to the frequency of radio 1, when radio 2 tries to attack it, it can't do it. It can't do it because radio 1 and radio 2 are on different frequencies. Once you get, and of course the base frequency of the control system is fear. It's low vibrational emotion. And an interesting thing that I've noticed in my life over the years is one of the ways that the attempt has been to undermine me, and it's going on at this time, funnily enough, not that it will work, is to create situations and people around me that will pull me in to that low vibrational emotional state. Because once you're pulled into that, you're actually syncing with the vibrational frequency of the control system, and then they can start to make an impact upon you. And so if you can stay outside of that, then you're vibrating at one frequency, the control system's vibrating at another, and never the twain shall meet. This is why it's so important. And I'm speaking to myself here as I say this. You know, I'm not the guru, Buddha, sitting on a mountain cross-legged saying, this is what you must do. I've sussed it. You know, we're all in this, and we're all kind of working to get ourselves in a certain state, me included. But when you're aware of it, it makes it more easier. And what we need to do is to just hold this understanding that we are infinite consciousness having an experience. We're not the experience. I'm not David Icke. David Icke's my experience. I'm infinite consciousness having an experience as David Icke. And when you come from that perspective, it helps you hold perspective on the experiences that we have instead of being pulled into them, so that you are the experience as well as having the experience, which means that you're pulled into a vibrational state where if it's an unpleasant experience and a stressful and fearful experience, well, then you're being pulled into the stadium in which the control system plays at home. And it's important that we hold this understanding, and it's a real challenge because all the 5 sense influences are telling us that you are David Icke, you were born in Leicester in 1952, and you are just one person, just Joe Public. You have no power. But if we can resist getting pulled into that, to realize that the reflection in the mirror is the reflection of the experience. It's not a reflection of who we are, though you can see who we are through the eyes often. Then you're in this world, as I've said many times before. You're in this world having the experience, but you're not of this world in the point of that you're perceiving the experience, and that can have a very powerful impact on not getting pulled into fear and stress and all the rest of it, which allows you to enter the control system's stadium on which it wants everybody. That's why it's created a society which is there to generate maximum fear, maximum worry, maximum anxiety, maximum conflict. Is because they want us in a certain vibrational frequency range, because that's the one that they can lock into us through.
Now, this brings up my next question. Now, so raising our vibration is a way to protect ourselves, to keep us out of that, to free us from that. In one of your books, forgive me for not remembering which one it was, but one of the books you described how the New Age movement is manipulated towards, in some senses, a new world order also, as being one. How is that? How can you explain that for those listening, how that's being done now?
Well, you know, I looked at the New Age movement a lot when I first started to awaken, because it was my first port of call when I was trying to get an understanding of what the heck was happening to me 20 years ago, and I've observed it, and I don't want to sit here now and say New Age load of rubbish and all the people in it rubbish. No, I'm not saying that. There are some wonderful people that operate in what people would call the New Age movement, an enormous number of genuine people. What I'm saying is that there are elements of it, and I would say significant elements of it, that think they've rejected religion in general, but have actually just accepted another one. if you give your power away to Christian heroes or Jewish heroes or Muslim heroes, that's considered by many people in the New Age as absolutely wrong. You must take your power back. You must be in your own power. You must create your own reality. You must express your uniqueness. And I agree with all of that. Mm-hmm. But then I see, for instance, you can go to Sedona, you can go to Glastonbury, or you can go to India, as I did a couple of years ago, and you can see a New Ager from 100 yards by what they're wearing. And then I've been into these ashrams in India, and I've seen New Age people going through religious rituals that are absolutely straight out of Hinduism and Islam and Judaism and Christianity in the way that they're performed. I see people wearing the same type of clothes. I see people having their own kind of heroes or divine figures to give their power away to. I mean, it used to be Ashtar Command for some people a long time ago, or it's Sananda, or it's the Great White Brotherhood. And for me, there was a great song years ago. It wasn't actually a great song, but the theme was it was by a guy called Val Dunican, an Irish singer, when I was a kid. And it said, "Walk tall, walk straight, and look the world right in the eye. That's what my mama told me when I was about knee high." And if we are infinite consciousness and we are expressions of the infinite one, then we should be looking each other in the eye. Oh yes, respect other aspects of consciousness for what they're doing, what they stand for, what they're expressing. Yes, good. But don't get a crick in the neck looking up, because you are them, they are you, I am you, you are me. And I still see hierarchical structures big time often within the New Age movement. And a hierarchy is illusion. Hierarchy is the control system. We cannot have a situation of hierarchy and then claim that everyone is an expression of the one. We either are or we're not. And of course, hierarchies are the way that the control system imposes itself in so many ways, because hierarchies are the few dictating to the many. And that can be a few bankers dictating to the entire banking system, a few politicians dictating to an entire nation, or it can be a few heroes in the New Age dictating or allowing them to be themselves to be dictated to when they are the vast majority. And for me, these blueprint structures of the control system, you find them everywhere if you look for them. And it's hierarchy is the old limitation. I'm above you, you're above me, I know my place. That's the old epoch. That's what's coming down. The pyramids of power, they're coming down because that's an expression of the old energy. And it's a shame that so much of the New Age, or significant swathes of it anyway, are still into hierarchy. It's not the way it is. I would suggest anyway, but everyone must believe what they want to believe, of course.
Well, I like how you put that. I really do. I want to switch gears one more time and go into the alien agenda. A lot of people have been talking about the good versus bad. I know how you perceive it, but I'm curious to know if ultimately, somebody told me recently that there's this agenda that we're going to be invaded, and the world powers are kind of slowly preparing us for that as they leak disclosure, and evidence comes out, and the Vatican says that contact is real. What is your take on this whole good, bad, us versus them kind of thing? Are the ETs good? Are they bad? What do we believe? There's so much.
Hilary, I don't see things in terms of good or bad. I see things in terms of conscious and unconscious. There are conscious human beings, there are unconscious human beings, and it takes you about 30 seconds to see the difference if you're in their presence. And because everything is an expression of this one infinite awareness, this all possibility that I call it, then if you are dealing with an infinite all possibility, then all possibility must be able to manifest. I mean, the two go together. So therefore, anything's possible. And when you're dealing with non-human entities or non-human expressions of awareness, then you must, of course, have the great tapestry, the great spectrum of possibility among them. So there are non-human entities, let's call them ETs for simplicity, that are conscious, and they will have a benevolent, supportive view of humanity. Indeed, they will have a benevolent, supportive view of all existence. You will have other ETs that are not conscious, and probably not terribly bright. You'll have other ETs, which is what I would suggest we're dealing with in terms of the control system, who are not conscious in terms of infinite consciousness, because anything that is conscious does not want control over. It does not want to impose its will upon. But they are extremely technologically advanced compared with humans at this point. They are, shall we say, clever because they have this intellectual advanced state of mind, but they are not wise in the sense that they are conscious. And when you have a technological possibility coming from a developed intellect, a developed mind, but you do not have that balanced by consciousness, wisdom, then you can get yourself into a very destructive situation, because I've said in my books 20 years ago nearly, cleverness without wisdom is the most destructive force on earth. It's very clever to understand how to make an atomic bomb, but it's not wise to do it. And this is the difference between the two. So what we're dealing with, I would suggest, Hillary, with it in terms of the control system, is extraterrestrials, or not even extraterrestrials, I call them other dimensionals, that are advanced intellectually, therefore very technologically advanced compared with us, and they have an understanding of how to manipulate energy as part of that intellectual understanding of the way reality works. But they do not have the open consciousness, the connection to the greater awareness to balance that understanding and use it in a compassionate, loving, balanced way. For instance, the same technology that can cause great destruction can give people free energy for indefinitely, no utility bills, none of it. So it's like a microphone. A microphone's not negative or positive. It's how you use it that's negative or positive. And this intellectually dominated extraterrestrial group, which I feel overwhelmingly takes a reptilian form, this is the mentality behind what we call the Illuminati, these bloodlines, which are hybrid, interbred bloodlines, which act as vehicles within this reality you might call visible light, for the reptilian and other, quote, demonic type entities operating outside of this reality to actually manipulate this reality. It's like, when you see scientists who are working with material that is dangerous, you'll see the material in a tank, and you'll see the scientist on the outside of the tank, and then he puts his hands through these gloves that go inside the tank, and then he can work the material. Now, he's outside the tank. What he's manipulating is inside the tank. And if you take that symbol, that analogy, that's basically what we're looking at, I would suggest, after 2 decades of researching this around the world, in terms of the control system. These bloodlines are like the gloves in the tank. They are the vehicle within this reality that allows these entities operating just outside of this reality to manipulate through them into this world. And the reason they're so obsessed with interbreeding and holding a certain genetic DNA state is because everything in this reality, when you come down to it, whether it looks just like a solid wall or it's DNA or a glass of beer, its base state is vibrational, waveform. That's where the information is that we decode into what we see as physical objects. So therefore, DNA is in its base form a vibrational field. Now, if you are wishing to, quote, possess another body, if you like, and take over its mental and emotional faculties, then the closer your vibrational state is to it, the more influence you're going to have over its mental and emotional state. And so they interbred with humanity, they're probably still doing it, no doubt they are, to create a hybrid bloodline. And the hybrid bloodline is quite simply a hybrid vibrational field, which allows them to lock into it much more powerfully than the general run of the human population, which is not as vibrationally compatible to them as the hybrid bloodlines that they have created and they perpetuate through fierce interbreeding. This is the reason that the aristocracy, for instance, and royalty of not just Europe but the world have incessantly interbred over the years with each other. It's not, it's snobbery just to keep the genes up. Yes, it is to keep the genes up. It's to keep a certain genetic state, like a computer software program. This is why the Eastern establishment families of the United States incessantly interbreed. It's because they're trying to hold this vibrational field, which will be diluted very, very fast if it's interbred with people that are not compatible with it.
David, if somebody is compatible with that kind of vibration and they are a hybrid, is it possible for them to overcome that strong kind of controlling energy that can attach to them? Can they evolve past that?
Absolutely they can. It's called consciousness. See, if you, I've got a computer in front of me now, and if I go to my documents, there are files galore all over it. Within the DNA are endless files, information files, experience files, kind of programmed behavior files, all over it. But just as with my documents, if I don't open the file and put it on the screen, it's not going to influence the reality of the computer. It's just going to sit there in a dormant state. So what these people do, this is again one of the key reasons that they bring their children up in a certain way, and one of the ways they bring them up is overwhelmingly with no human parental child bonding, with no love, with no warmth. I mean, people have noted over the years the lack of warmth between each other of the House of Windsor, the British royal family. I mean, I saw this extraordinary black and white film the other day where the Queen is walking off a plane back in the days of black and white. She's been to an overseas visit with Prince Philip, the chap. They walk down the steps, and there's a line of dignitaries at Heathrow Airport waiting to meet them. And she goes along and she's going, hello, hello, and these dark suits, hello, mom, and bowing their heads. And then there's a gap, and then you see what the gap is, and it's the fact that there's not a man standing there, the next in line. It's Prince Charles, who's a little boy. And he's standing in line with the dignitaries. He puts his hand out to his mother and shakes hands like the other dignitaries, and she goes on to the next one. Now, that's part of the way that these people are brought up. They're also sent to what we call in Britain public schools, but they're actually private schools, fee-paying schools. You have a different name for them in America, same thing. And they go to these various schools where they are brought up in a set and looked after, for want of a term, in a certain way. And then there's the other thing. They're eventually put through rituals. And these rituals are designed specifically to create vibrational fields that open the files to the deeper levels of this hybrid state, to open the deeper levels of the hybrid program. And as these files open, these kids start to change in terms of their attitude to life, themselves, and the world, because the program has been activated and it starts to influence their sense of self and reality more and more powerfully. When you are conscious, when you allow consciousness in, it can override any of these programs. I've met people from these bloodlines who are lovely people, wonderful people. They have not allowed, because of their own state of being, they've not allowed these files to be opened, and so they're not influenced by them. And they're seen within these Illuminati families as cuckoos in the nest. I know one very, very well, and she's a remarkable, staggeringly remarkable woman. And she's right in the middle of some of these bloodlines, and she couldn't be less like them. And they don't know what to do with her. So consciousness can overcome anything, but it's got to be open. It's got to be, it's simple things like, is it right? Is it just? Is it fair? If people just keep asking that question, instead of, what is right for me in my perception in the moment, what is right, fair, and just in these circumstances? If we keep making decisions, whether we're in the bloodline or not, if we keep making decisions based on that criteria as we go through our daily life, then we are not going to be in the vibrational state of the entities and the control system. We're not, because the control system says, what do I need to do to get the outcome that I want for me? That's its whole criteria. That's the whole criteria of these entities. And because one of the key traits, which explains a lot about the world, Hillary, one of the key traits of these hybrid bloodlines, when the files are open, is a lack of empathy. No empathy. The inability to empathize with the consequences for others of our actions. And once you have no empathy, the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior has gone. Because anything goes. 3,000 people on 9/11, and we got to invade the countries we wanted, didn't we? What's the problem? 100,000 or hundreds of thousands of dead and injured people in Iraq. So what? We got control of Iraq. I mean, what's the problem? This is the mentality that they go through when you have no empathy, because it's whatever's right for me. This is why they lie all the time. They have to lie, of course, because if they told the truth, then they'd be saying it's all a control system, and there's a few controlling the many. So they're not going to do that. So they have to lie all the time. They have to lie about everything they do on the stepping stones of the agenda. So, because if they told the truth, they'd say, well, we're only doing this now because it's leading to this and it's leading to that, and the outcome we want is total human control. They're not going to say that, which means these people are lying all the time. But to them, lying is not a problem, it's the means to an end. But you told a massive lie then. But I got the outcome I wanted. What's the problem? This is the mentality once you have no empathy. So anyone who has empathy with the consequences for others of their actions, who does what they believe to be right and just and fair when they're making decisions over whatever situation they're facing, they are, by that definition alone, going to pull themselves vibrationally or hold themselves vibrationally outside of the control system's clutches.
David, I have to ask you, why do you think the positive contact experiences are so withheld and not really actively out there in the world of that topic? Why do you think that that's the case?
Well, I think there's a tremendous amount of information about non-human activity around this planet that's kept from us, and one of the reasons is that the fact that there is a non-human element to the control of humanity that is prime to them to keep under wraps, to keep from people. The other thing is that once you start talking in any way about life beyond this planet, what are you doing? You're immediately expanding people's perception of themselves and the world and reality. No longer is it just one race of people on one planet in a dead solar system and in an apparently dead galaxy. Now suddenly, bang, hey, your expansion of a sense of possibility and the reality you're part of suddenly massively expands once you accept that these other expressions of life exist, not just exist, but exist in enormous abundance. So there are many different reasons for it, and of course they don't want people to perceive any positive kind of benevolent connection to an extraterrestrial force, because that by definition takes their power away, because they want to control by being the only force, the only source of control and information and all the rest of it. They don't want anybody else being looked at as, hey, you know, it's not just about governments and people like that, you know, that there's benevolent non-human entities visiting the planet. You know, crikey, what can they tell us? So it's like they have a process of what I call defend the first domino, because, you know, you see these situations sometimes where they have thousands and thousands and sometimes millions of dominoes, and they push the first one down and then it hits the next one, and suddenly they're all going down right to the end. And so they have this system, and like I say, I call defend the first domino for this reason. If you start to encompass, for instance, alternative methods of healing instead of ridiculing and rejecting them as the system does, then you are pressing the first domino, because, okay, the first domino's gone down, which is, okay, yeah, well, there's something in this alternative view of healing. Okay, next domino is a question. Well, how do they work then? And now you've started dominoes falling in terms of changing the perception of the nature of the human body, the nature of who we are, and all the rest of it, once the first domino's gone, which is, yeah, well, there could be something in this alternative healing, the system says. And so they defend the first domino fiercely. So, bang, we must not let alternative healing have any credibility because of what comes from that. And in the same way, we must shut the door on the whole ET thing, especially the benevolent part of it, because of what will come from that if we let the first domino fall. But I do feel that, as you indicated earlier, Hilary, that there is a plan which has been talked about for a long time by various researchers and what have you, that there is a plan at some point to introduce the fact that there is a possible threat to humanity from an extraterrestrial force. It won't be the force revealed that's really behind it, but if you want to, through this technique that I call problem, reaction, solution, create the problem, get the reaction, do something, oh my God, and then you offer the solution to the problems you have created, which changes society as you want it. If you want to change the global situation, if you want to change the world globally in terms of everyone at the same time, then you need global problems through which you can offer a global solution. So you have, for instance, the global war on terror. So you can offer global solutions to that. You have a global financial problem. So you can offer global solutions to that, like a world central bank that dictates to all global finance to everywhere in the country. You have global warming problem they have created in the public mind, or increasingly less mind, but still an enormous amount of people. So you can offer global solutions to that. And of course, if you're dealing with a global threat from an extraterrestrial race, perceived, manufactured, whatever, then you have the ability to put a global solution to that, which is bringing all the, you know, military and political kind of systems together as one. Just, you know, I mean, what do you have in a country if there's a threat to a country? You have a war cabinet. You have a few people sitting around the table making the decisions, not the rest of the government anymore. And of course, if you had a perceived threat to the world from an extraterrestrial external force, then bingo, you would have the equivalent of a global war cabinet, a few people making decisions for the world. So I'm not saying this is definitely going to happen, but I'm saying it's a possibility through something that's been talked about for years called Project Bluebeam, which was written about many, many years ago, that this was one of the plans, one of the possibilities that would be introduced to manipulate humanity to accept an immense centralization of power in the world.
David, what about all of the people that are coming forward recently about time travel and exposing the fact that governments all over the world have been funding this for quite some time and researching this, and that they have in fact been using the technology? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that technology in the underground bases and the secret projects is light years ahead of anything we see in the public arena. And this is a very important point, because if you want to suppress people's sense of what is possible, in other words, potential, then what you need to do is suppress their perception of possibility. Now, this seems like an incredibly obvious statement, but sometimes we miss the obvious. What I'm saying by this is, if you suppress through suppression of science and such things, suppression of technological development in the public domain, what is actually possible, then you create a sense of limitation in the public mind, because the public's mind's basic perception of what's possible is what they can see is possible because it's happening. This is why when people talked about flying in spaceships, or even flying at one point, they were laughed at. That's not possible. You can't fly with a heavier than air machine. You can't do this. How many, of the things we take for granted today, before they were before people's eyes, and was suggested that this is possible, that the general population said, "You're mad, you're crazy, that's not possible." But once they see it, their sense of possibility expands. Oh, you can fly in a heavier than air machine. Oh, I've just been on my holidays in one. I know it's true. I've experienced it. And so the more you suppress what's possible, the more you suppress perception of possibility. And so when people come out, like researchers, and say, this is what they're doing, and this is the technology they're using to do it, people say, that's crazy, that's not possible. No, your perception is that it's not possible. It's not that it's actually not possible. It's your perception that is telling you that. And so beyond the public arena are fantastic technology to give us free energy, to keep people alive and healthy for immensely longer than we are now. So many different things are being used, not always being used, often not being used positively, being used negatively, but being used in another way, with a benevolent, loving force, could bring tremendously positive changes to the human experience. And this is another interesting area. I don't know how long we've got, but this is another interesting area, Hillary, that I've talked about in this new book, Human Race Get Off Your Knees. And that is that these extraterrestrials, these reptilian stroke, manipulating non-humans, they operate outside of this reality overwhelmingly, and therefore they operate to a different perception of time, which is just a construct. They can see down our timeline to a certain extent, but we can't see down because we're in it. And interestingly, when you look at prophetic books that have been written in novel form, like George Orwell's 1984, like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, if you put those two books, let's just take those two books, if you put those two books together, then you've pretty much got what the control system wants to impose on planet Earth. And then some, but in theme, they're absolutely right. So then you say, hold on a second, how do they know that? Huxley's book was written in 1932, and Orwell's book was written in 1948, or published in 1948, how did they know? How do some of these other books, prophetic books, know? And how could they talk about technology and the use of drugs, etc., that didn't even exist at the time, but do now? And it's interesting when you look at those two books, because George Orwell, real name Eric Blair, was a pupil at Eton College, where the royals go to, one of the elite colleges in Britain, just outside Windsor. In fact, literally just outside Windsor, almost part of Windsor, where Windsor Castle is, one of the main homes of the royal family. And his teacher, French teacher, for a time at Eton College, was Aldous Huxley. And Huxley introduced Orwell, Eric Blair, to the Fabian Society, which is one of the major strands in the Illuminati network of secret societies. It was the organization that created the British Labour Party of Tony Blair, the start of the 20th century, etc. And when you can access this secret society network at some deep level, you can access the projected future that these guys want to impose upon humanity. And you can therefore write novels which appear to be from imagination, but with the passage of decades now, we can see stunningly accurate in terms of what's actually happening and is planned to happen. And then you ask the question, well, how could they write about technology that we have now, but was not even thought of then? Because when you are interacting with these non-human entities through the deep levels, not, Fred and Joe down the Freemasons Lodge. I'm talking the deep inner core levels of this global secret society network. You can access the projected future through those non-human entities. And things like nanotechnology and computer systems and all this stuff that's coming out now, it was being known about and used by these non-human entities, these reptilian entities, I would suggest, for eons. But
David,
but just going to say, what is the use of introducing nanotechnology in our timeline of 1640 or 1820? Waste of time. It's introduced as we reach the point where it can be used as part of the control system. And if you can have access to that information way back through the secret society network, then you can write prophetic novels, including technology that was not there at the time, but is coming.